Welcome back to my ranking of the Monster Hunter monsters. We are currently at the top 100 monsters, so from here on out, there will be no full negative opinions. There's going to be some negative opinions mixed with some added positives. Last time, we went over what I consider to be the worst of the worst, and in today's part, we'll be going over the monsters that are meh or a D tier. These are monsters I have no strong distaste for, nor are they monsters I talk about when a conversation about the franchise comes up. But let's not waste any more time and dive right back in into my ranking of the Monster Hunter monsters. Let's begin! The Great Roggy starts off this list today. Compared to his other two counterparts of Jaggy and Great Baggy, the Great Roggy does things much better. The design is the best of the three by far, and actually has a pretty fun fight. The poison smoke clouds can really get in the way sometimes though, and can even catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. Not only that, but the Great Roggy has one of my favourite looking armor sets in the entire game of 3rd gen, especially since it comes from a raptor. Usually their armor is very boring, and same with their weapons. But with the Great Roggy, it gives you a sweet cowboy western appearance. If that doesn't prove that the Great Roggy is a superior raptor compared to the other two, or the others that we've looked at, I don't know what does. But that's not to say it's the best early game raptor monster. Coming in next, we have Gobool, which has a cool design and with some cool mechanics. It is mostly an underwater fight though, but honestly I don't mind that. Many seem to dislike Gobool, but I personally enjoy it more than others. Okay, sure, the underwater combat is janky to say the least, but imagine what it would be like now. The Gobool's main trick is to use the bulb on its head and flash you. This could be avoided if you dodge out at the right time or if you're too far away, but you need to be extremely lucky for that to work. Even if you do get affected, stun is not that hard to get out of. Just button mash or rotate the control stick as fast as you can, and you'll be out in no time. The Gobool when on land is a much more simpler fight, and it's much easier, though it rarely goes on land. Many of you will be surprised to find that Ian Cuckoo is actually one of my favourite early game monsters. Okay, it's not the best thing in the world, and to be fair, it can be a bit weird. Compared to everything we've talked about so far though, the Cuckoo has a fight that outmatches all of them. It's not boring like Shen Garen, but it's not as simplistic as Arzuros. It's like taking Rathlos and making it a bird wyvern, and also a lot weaker. Having it spew fireballs, beak slams, and a bunch of running tackles. This is one of the few early game monsters that keeps you on your feet. That's not to say it's perfect though. The design itself, whilst fine, isn't my favourite, and I'll even go into that on another monster that I'll be going into later on in this video, which you'll probably guess who that is if you're fans of the series. The Lagombi is by far not one of my favourite monsters. If anything, when I first fought it back in 3rd gen, it was one of my least favourites, but nowadays it's actually not that bad, especially in Rise. Lagombi mostly slides around on the ice or snow, and just throws snowballs at you. It is a really fun and cool idea for a hare-like rabbit monster, and to turn it into almost kind of like this bear-like creature that uses its belly to slide around. And it is pretty fun. Though its other counterpart, which we'll be going on in probably another video, not this series, is not fun, and I don't like it. But the Lagombi is just, if anything, the best bear monster from the 3rd gen. Weirdly enough, Blagonga also makes it on to this list at this point. Blagonga is not the most interesting monster. It's it's a gorilla monkey-like monster that breathes icy breath and has a weird bump on its head. I'm not sure what that's for. It's a bigger Blanca, or Blango, or Blonga, I can't remember what their names are. But honestly, Blangonga's the most forgettable monster in my opinion, or one of, even though it's this far down. Okay, seriously, can we get something on that thing's head, please? It's really unnerving. Please? Okay. Thank you. Blangonga is fine in itself, it's just really, really boring. The Royal Ludroth is a monster that I never really liked the look of, especially in the old gen games. When you first fight it in Free Ultimate, or try, depending on what game you played, it's said that its mane is like made out of sponge, but it never really shows that in the games. Yeah, sure, it soaks up water and is like very dried out when it gets tired, but it doesn't really look like a sponge. It just looks like a bunch of bananas on its neck, bunched up. But in Rise, it got such a makeover, and I love how it looks now. The actual water being soaked up into its mane looks so cool. The Royal Ludroth itself, in terms of the fight, is pretty cool. Typical, Leviathan kind of fight. All in all, it's actually a pretty decent monster, even though many people don't really care for it. Beatotus is like an icy version of Gyarados, which, like I mentioned in my last video, it's not the best, but Beatotus is much better. A better design, by far, a cooler, concept, and considering it's weirdly swimming through snow, which I would assume it's also swimming through the ground and the rock, this thing is pretty cool, but it's just there. It's not really significant to any major fight or anything. It's important to fight it in Iceborne, but it's not really something you remember fighting at all, even if it is the first monster from the Iceborne DLC. It's not like the most memorable thing in the game. This next entry might get me some flack for this, but Uragaan is just so boring. Out of all the monsters from the 3rd gen, I can't really find a reason to like Uragaan. It's a big brute wyvern that slams its chin down and makes explosions, which is cool, but it's so boring to look at. It's one of the weirdest looking monsters in my opinion. Considering it's made of this ore kind of stuff around its body, it's not the best, and plus the rolling on top of that, it's so annoying. I've never liked Uragaan, and I never will like Uragaan. It's pointless, and its deviant is the worst deviant in the game. Lavasioth is another frontier monster. Like Hypnocratus, Lavasioth doesn't really get much credit in the main series, as it is mainly a frontier monster, even though I actually never realised that until recently. Lavasioth is fine. It's in the old gen games, it was okay to fight, it never really stood out, but in World, when you fight it for the first time, it's so annoying. This is taking the monster Agnactor, making its gimmick of hardening its body up, or the lava on its body, or magma, and just making it a worse concept. That's just annoying. Lavasioth isn't the most interesting monster. Yeah, it's a lava fish, which on paper sounds cool, but it's not executed well in this instance. Varroth is one of those monsters that you can't really tell if it's good or bad. It's not terrible, it's just there. Varroth is mainly a monster that charges, uses mud to kind of coat itself, and it's actually one of those monsters that changes its element depending on if it has the mud armor or not. And it's a really cool concept. It is also one of the biggest walls in Monster Tri or Free Ultimate in my opinion, especially when you start the game for the first time. Varroth hits like a truck when you first fight it, and it's really powerful. but when you get used to its attacks, when you get used to the timing of everything, it's actually pretty simplistic, and it's fun to use a hammer to absolutely knock this thing about. And that's why I enjoy Barroth so much. It's actually pretty fun to fight. In my last video, I mentioned that paralysis was a very much hated concept in my opinion. However, in this instance, the Kirin is not terrible. I was going to have it in the last episode, or the last video, but I decided to put it down a few steps because its design is absolutely beautiful. No, it's not the best thing to fight. It's really fast, it has lightning paralysis, can stun you, and can just kill you in one hit. It's really hard, like, it's really annoying to fight, but in terms of design, it's so beautiful. It's one of the best designed monsters in my opinion. Well, for this part of the list, that is. I don't know if any of you know this, I actually had a fear of Tetsukabra when I first saw it. Back when I was like, what, 12, 13, I was very scared of a lot of things, and I still up to this day. But the Tetsukabra is actually a pretty fun monster when you fight it. It's probably one of the most interesting in 4 Ultimate, or 4, again, depending on when you fight it. The whole gimmick is built, like, taking rocks and crushing them in its mouth. And it's one of my favorite design monsters from 4, but it's just so boring half the time. And it's one of like those monsters that it's just, yeah, you exist. Cool, I guess. Many find Lunastra to be one of the worst monsters that came in World, and you're not wrong, and I do agree, Monster World's Lunastra is one of the most infamous to fight, though I will give it this, Lunastra does have a beautiful design. Much like Kirin, it's one of those Elder Dragons that not many people like to fight, but in order to do so, to actually get good equipment, you do need to fight it, and it does have good equipment, especially early game. Later games, or later in Master Rank, I haven't fought Lunastra in Master Rank, and I've heard the stories. Its Supernova can absolutely shred a hunter's health bar, no matter what armor they're wearing. It's so annoying. This is a monster I never thought I'd actually like as much as I do, but Tetranodon is actually kind of fun. Even though its design is not my favourite, it is a platypus that also becomes a sumo wrestler, which is actually a pretty cool design and pretty cool gimmick. Though Tetranodon isn't the most interesting thing to fight besides that. I mean, yeah, it's okay in terms of other things, and it does well with the sumo wrestler gimmick, though it's so easy to fight. I'd expect this thing to be like a mid-tier boss, but it's not. It's like an early game fight, which I get it. You need early game fights, but Tetranodon shouldn't have been it. I think Tetranodon should have been much higher, especially in mid-tier. Radobon is the better Uragaan, and you cannot disagree with me. Radobon's whole thing is the same as Uragaan, except it's so much better. As it rolls about, it picks up these bones that it makes its armor for itself. That itself is already as cool as it should sound, but its design is 10 times better than Uragaan's. And considering the fact that the armor itself isn't hard to break off, it makes this thing so much fun to fight. And it's also the fact that this thing can only be found in the Rotten Vale, which is one of my favourite areas in the game, and it's also one of my favourite monsters from the Rotten Vale. well, I say that it's this low, but still, it's okay. It's better than Urgon. That's all I'm saying. The young cuckoo we were talking about just like a few minutes ago. Yeah, me, its older son? Young Garuga is like the love child of a Raffian and a young cuckoo, which is actually what it is. It's weird to say the least. Young Garuga literally moves like a Raffian, and we will talk about Raffian much later, maybe not even in this part, in a later part. But young Garuga has poison, tail flip attacks, and it's so aggressive. I've never had a young Garuga hunt go without me being absolutely demolished by this thing. It hunts the first thing it sees, and it stays on it until it's dead. The Kurapeka is one of my favorite gimmicks of any monster. Being able to mimic a monster cry to summon it is so cool and so much fun. That is until you find yourself fighting a Devil Joe, which isn't fun, especially with the Kurapeka being an early game monster and Devil Joe being mostly for like higher rank hunters. The Kurapeka is one of the monsters that can really turn the tables on you very quickly, which is why it's so high up on the list. Even though it's an early game monster, in fact it's actually one of like the third fight you'd go up against, or third monster you go up against in Free Ultimate. It's one of the weakest, yet it can summon really powerful monsters to attack you. Acnosom is one of those monsters that I myself am a good fan of, but compared to everything else, it's so low down on this list. The fight with Acnosom itself is so much fun to fight, especially with the way it moves. It's like a dancer, almost, mixed with like making itself into a parasol. Its whole gimmick is using its like dancing abilities and the large frill on its head as a way to like attack you. It can turn it into a spear, a shovel, I think, and also some sort of like battering ram that it uses to slam into you, or just use it as like to whip you. But Acnosom is not that great of a fight, and considering it's like a better young cuckoo, gets my vote for being a better monster. Remember Gravios? Well, it's much better son. The Basarios is what the Gravios should have been, but it's much better. What the Gravios? What? I don't get it. Why is Basarios the better version of the two? Basarios is a younger Gravios. Okay, it gets rid of the whole, as it grows up, it gets rid of the whole, rock kind of formation, right? Yet keeps its defense. Basarios has this gimmick of hiding itself into the ground, and you have to find which one's the real one. And yes, there is a tell for which one it is, which is okay, but still, it's so much fun to find this thing as well. Other monsters do this, but Basarios does it the best, and it was the first, so... Coming back for another boring fight. This time it's Zoramagdaros. This thing is absolutely colossal, except I will give it points that you can go along its back shell and break parts of its body to deal massive damage. That itself is fine. The only problem I have with it is that it's not like it's attacking you directly. The only good part of the fight that I actually enjoy is the fight where it goes in through the canyon, and then you have to fight a Nergigante near the end of the fight. That's the only good part about it, because Nergigante is 10 times better than what Zoramagdros is. And that concludes part 2 of my ranking of the Monster Hunter monsters. I hope you all enjoyed. I do hope you're all enjoying this series on my channel. Hope you'll drop a like, comment down. Comment down which monsters you think should have been in this part, or maybe monsters that you think aren't supposed to be in this part. Like, what are your opinions on these monsters? Other than that, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you all in part 3.